President Kamei, we would be transitioning to item 12B.
Yeah, so this is now going to 12B, which is the report of Rocketship Financial Audit for fiscal year 2017-18.
Good evening, Superintendent Dewan, Madam President, esteemed members of the board. I am Maria O'Halloran, the Regional Director for Rocketship Public Schools, and when I want to thank you for inviting us back to respond to your questions about the most recent financial document audit. We recognize that the delay in our audit is a serious issue and that our delay caused delays in the requirements as an authorizer in California. We regret how our delay may have negatively impacted SCCOE's impeccable reputation and the reputation of Superintendent Dewan. Our failure was a break in your trust in our word and to our commitment to comply with the letter of the law and the MOU. As an organization, we continue to improve on our processes, systems, and tools to ensure compliance and serve our families. We are here tonight to address this issue directly and answer any questions that you may have. Before we start, I'd like to take a moment to thank the charter schools team. Each and every one of them has spent a few dozen hours with us in the month of February, so thank you. Christelle, Christine, Vicki, Michelle, they have been invaluable to us. And Director Christelle during the safety and emergency preparedness visits. We appreciate their professionalism and dedication to their work, and we're deeply grateful for the partnership we have together. Joining me tonight are two of our C-suite officers, so we are prepared to answer the questions you may have and to show the seriousness with which we take delivering our audit late for a second year. First, I'd like to introduce Lynn Liao, our Chief Talent and Strategy Officer. Next, I'd like to introduce and call to the podium Keisha Bailey, our dedicated Chief Financial Officer, and I hope that between the three of us, we can clarify any and all the questions you may have.
Great.
Good evening, and thank you very much for the opportunity to address you tonight. I want to start by reaffirming that we deeply regret that we submitted our recent audits past our statutory deadlines. Rocketship leadership and our board of directors fully understands that the delay of our audit is a serious issue, and we take rectifying that very seriously and are taking serious steps in that regard. At our board meeting last week, the Rocketship Board of Directors unanimously approved the formation of an audit committee and named our longtime board member, Louis Jordan, as chair of that audit committee. Mr. Jordan also stepped down from his chair position of our business committee to create greater clarity, independence, and oversight of the critical audit need. Despite this delay in our audit, we have been very diligently working to improve our processes, systems, and staff over the last year. I'll share a few of the changes that we have been making. In March of 2018, so prior to the audit period ending, we had already hired an external firm to assess our accounting organization, our technology, and our processes. They prepared a study of our organization in May of 2018, provided recommendations from that evaluation, which included a restructuring of our organization, adding additional talent to our teams, including increasing staff both on the accounting as well as on the financial planning side. They recommended that we improve the usage of our accounting system, adding more modules and making it more robust. They added additional procedures for our teams to follow and helped us develop even more detailed closeout procedures for a monthly and quarterly basis. We immediately began implementing these recommendations. We hired consultants. We began investing further in our internal systems right after the receipt of the recommendations and worked on those from May through the fall of this past year. In October of 2018, we hired Fariba Bagheri as our new controller. Fariba brings over 25 years of experience as controller and senior financial leader across companies of various sizes and across many industries and brings a great deal of expertise to Rocketship. we're very pleased to have her on our team to elevate our talent and capability. In November 2018, we hired Zobi Sheikh as Director of Finance. He also brings over 25 years of industry experience and is elevating the level of talent and expertise that we have at Rocketship. Your staff had a brief opportunity to meet both Zobi and Fariba when they attended our board meeting in San Jose last week. We truly appreciate the SCCOE staff support that we've had during this period of time and in the past, and we look forward to continuing that partnership with them going forward. Our auditor, Clifton Larson Allen, also understands the gravity of this delay. They've acknowledged their part in the delay, and we certainly acknowledge all of our parts within that. Our auditor has agreed to and indicated the need to add more senior staff to our account, and has indicated that they will do that for us in the future, adding more staff and a greater number of people on our audit so that it will be timely. I am 100% confident that with these changes that we will submit our audit on time this year and in every subsequent year. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, Trustee King.
Thank you.
So I have a concern too. You just formed an audit committee just this year?
We have not had an audit committee in the past. We've had a business committee, essentially a finance committee that reviewed finances, and as part of their role, they were responsible for reviewing audit procedures, and to create more clarity and to create separation and increase focus, we have just formed an audit committee as of this year and take that very seriously. Yes.
Because you're a 501c3, aren't you?
We are, yes.
Yeah, it's required by law that you have an audit committee as a 501c3. I'm surprised your audit company didn't say in the past.
We have it's a separate audit committee. We've had individuals who are responsible for reviewing audit that are board members who've served in that role. However, we've made very clear separation of duties so that there is no overlap.
No, that's required by law too for nonprofits, is you have to have a finance committee and an audit. I'm just surprised your auditor didn't point that out years ago. So, okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay. So, Vice President Song, and then we'll go to Trustee Ortiz.
So I'm just confused by your presentation because you began to tell me that March 2018 you had a consultation or somebody advising you of hiring more people, and Rocketship went ahead and hired more people.
And no, if I may go back to the dates that we referenced, we hired a consultant to review our operations on the finance and accounting side in March of 2018. They completed their work in May. But we then hired external consulting staff immediately. We could not find permanent people on the spot. So
you've done this starting a year ago, and you've been building more people. So in other words, you went ahead and spent more public dollars to hire more people, and yet it still resulted in presenting your paperwork late and resulting you being here today. Is that what you're telling me?
If I can clarify on dates,
please.
Our audit would be the end of period June 30, 2018, and therefore the processes and changes we made really began to be implemented in May, and so they would not have been going on during the full year that had been audited. So what does that have to do with being late? So we expect to see all of the improvements in this current year, which will impact and improve the result for this fiscal year audit. But
that's not addressing what caused you to be out of compliance. I thought you were going to start explaining why the compliance, you have not met the compliance, but you're basically saying moving forward, starting a year ago, that it's going to be better.
By indicating what we've done to address it, we're trying to also indicate what we've identified as the reason for having difficulty with compliance.
So can you help me understand what you identified that resulted in late compliance?
It's the same things that we went through that we've been improving. For example, better improvement in use an augmentation of our ERP, internal systems.
What's an ERP?
That is essentially our accounting systems. That we found that they should have been used more robustly, that there was more that could be done with them that our prior staff had not done. And so we identified that and improved it.
And when did you find this out?
When we did our review, we had consultants come in to help us and take a
Last
deeper
year.
look. That's correct. And we
And
made
how
those
many
changes
years has
over the
Rocket
summer.
Ship been in operation?
We celebrated
Altogether?
11 years.
And so you just found this out last year.
Rocket Ship has changed over the years. As we know, at the beginning, we were a smaller organization. As we become a more complex organization, our finance and accounting needs have also changed. We have looked to see what is appropriate given the complexity of our organization currently. What we needed at year one of our organization or at year 5 is different than what we need to have in place now at this level of our maturity. And what we're doing is making sure that what we put in place now is appropriate to address the complexity of our work. That would not have been the same staff or the same process that we probably needed 5 years ago when we acknowledged that and have made the steps to do that.
May I suggest?
Yeah.
Okay. It's a little bit confusing in terms of the dates and the timelines and when you move to make corrections. And, I agree with Trustee Song that, in fact, it just, things don't sort of line up very clearly. And so it would be helpful to have something that, I'm a visual person, and it would be very helpful for me as I'm thinking, well, you knew, but you didn't know, and then you changed it, and it's not as clear as you're talking through this, and the timeline seems a little bit sort of disjointed. And I am a visual person, and it would be very helpful if you had something laying it out more clearly so that we could have a better understanding as to the whole picture. Because I get the feeling that it's sort of like little bits and pieces here, and we don't really see it the way you see it, that you see it every day and you understand the ins and out and why and all of that. We're trying to understand the picture, and we only see little bits of it. So help us understand what happened.
So we'll be happy to follow up with a timeline to put that on paper so
Would
that
that be
it's easy
helpful,
to
or
see.
would you need something else?
I think I need something else.
Okay.
So that's very helpful, actually.
Okay.
That's a good suggestion, and it's a start. But I think you need to understand that I've been here 19 years, and I've known Rocket Ship from the start. And so when I look out and look for Rocket Ship, all of you are new faces. And so you don't have the institutional memory that I carry when I envision Rocket Ship. And Rocket Ship is not just mom and pop charter school that started in the local. It may have in the first, but it once had a national news making, asking 20 charter schools all at once to county board, and it created a sensation, charter school movement and sensation. 20 ask didn't really go far. But when it happened, this trustee at least asked John Danner and Preston Smith, will you be here in the next 10 years, next however many years? And they said, yes, we'll be here. And they're nowhere to be seen. And all of you are new faces, and this incompliance happens. It didn't happen to a small charter school where you could expect that, yeah, oversight could happen. It happened to Rocket Ship. It happened to Rocket Ship. I don't know if you know what that means when I say it happened to Rocket Ship. And so I'm trying to get a grasp of this big CMO, Rocket Ship, nationwide, creating news, who had the audacity to ask for 20 charter schools at once and have this kind of mistake happen. And you're talking about a year ago, you started something, consultants said this and that, and you hired people. And I'm trying to make sense, how does this happen to Rocket Ship? And so I want to hear, how can Rocket Ship do this? And if this happened once or twice, maybe I think a year prior was shaky, but it wasn't as grave as this one, how are you going to move forward and it's not going to happen? And At which point were you going to come report to us if it wasn't for our charter school information item? And at which point are you going to inform your parents and let them know the gravity of what you did? And how is this possible when you have CMO? And like you said, you had spent public dollars hiring staff away in the main headquarters office, I'm envisioning. How are you going to explain this to your parents? If I can't understand what you just said, help me understand and help your parents understand.
Thank you. I don't think there's an answer to that. There was a very long, I don't think there was a specific question, but
You
we'd be
can
happy
start by
to
trying.
But we would happily provide you something in writing that gives you more detail on dates and times. I think that was the specific request, and we'd happily do that.
But I think that in terms of how do you explain it to parents is very valid. I mean, I don't know if you haven't, how do they know? Maybe they don't know. I don't know. But I think that's, I think, a very legitimate ask, you know, in terms of how you do that.
We've explained to our board meetings are public. They are fully published for all of our parents to have all of the information, and that is how we've communicated the detail related to our audit in our most recent board meeting where we covered it extensively, which was a week ago.
Okay.
I'm going to let other board
Okay, no.
members-
I
Yes.
just want to make sure we're okay
I'm
over
just
here.
going to take a breather.
All right. Trustee Ortiz, and then we'll go to Trustee Rossi.
So first off, I appreciate you coming here today as the trustee that represents the area where a majority of your charter schools are active, whether they're petitioned through us or not. It's important to me to have transparency, and by you showing up, that means a lot. I wanted to ask, so I understand that your auditing is done by group, right, or regional, correct? Is it possible, or can we request, whichever one, for individual audits? I know that would take up more time, but I want to make sure that we have a more concentrated account of the finances.
Within the consolidated audit, there is a presentation for every school. So just to be sure that you saw that that's included, there's a balance sheet, income statement, and cash flow statement for every school. In terms of your request on additional audits, I do not know if that's within our MOU, but I'm sure that could be discussed in the future on whether that would be a prudent or a possibility. But the information for each school is currently in the consolidated in later pages within the document.
So, thank you for that. So, regardless of whether it's in the MOU or not, are you willing to provide individual audits?
I think we want to discuss that with staff to be sure that we understand what you want and what you're looking to see to make sure we get to the goal. I don't want to respond without understanding the full picture of what you would like us to do.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that.
We don't want to overpromise on something that would be difficult to deliver or be sure. We want to be sure that if we were making a promise, we know what would be required to actually fulfill it. So I would rather make sure that that we contemplate and really understand the detail of what you would like.
Okay. And another thing really quickly, parent engagement is really important to me. The fact that, this occurred and, I understand things happen. I would like to feel assured that parents understood what occurred with their public money. I understand that the meetings are public. Does that mean they're taking place in San Jose? They're taking place in San Jose?
Yes.
Okay. And there's local people on those boards?
There are local people on the board.
Like parents?
There are no parents currently on the Rocketship board.
All right. I think a discussion on parent engagement would be in order, just to make sure that we have transparency to the best of our ability. Whether that's in the MOU or not, that could be a discussion moving forward. Thank you.
Yeah, before we go to Trustee Rossi, I want to piggyback on this because, I respectfully do not agree that just because you have board meetings and parents should go to board meetings, that that's sufficient. I think that when something happens and parents should know, there should be a vehicle in addition to just a board meeting, saying that our board meetings are, open and, anyone can attend and that sort of thing. That's not sufficient for me. So I just want you to know that. It may not be a requirement, but it speaks to the transparency that Trustee Ortiz is talking about. So I would like for you to think about that and think about when something happens, maybe it's something else, maybe it's whatever. How do you address it with parents, right? And to say, oh, they can come to a board meeting. Yeah, that's right. But I don't think that's sufficient. So I just want you to know that. Trustee Rossi.
What address do your local San Jose board meetings take place?
At our San Jose Regional Office, 2001 Gateway Place.
And how often do you hold board meetings there?
Almost every other month, is that correct, Keisha?
Our board meetings are quarterly. And then there are also various board committee meetings that also occur on a quarterly basis.
Board meeting every 3 months?
That's correct.
Okay. I'd like to ask you about the $400,000 that you were assessed. How is that broken up between school sites, and what happened there? Why were you assessed that penalty? And who assessed it? Just
the assessment was a finding on credentialing that was assessed, that was identified by our auditor, and it specifically impacts 3 of our schools. It was determined by identifying an amount of instructional minutes that might have been impacted by this specific credentialing issue. We can, if we have additional questions specifically about credentialing, our Chief Talent and Strategy Officer, Lynn, is here to go over that in more detail. In terms of your specific question about the assessment, the impact was for our Redwood City Prep School, $117,000, for our Spark Academy, $238,000, and for Alma Academy, $46,000. I think you were also asking how is that assessed, and it was recognized in our June 30, 2018 revenue, the impact of that, a reduction in revenue, and the cash impact will be impact the organization during this fiscal year with a lower amount of apportionment.
I need clarification. You said that it was identified by your auditor, but actually it was assessed by, if staff can help me with that, it wasn't something that you self-reported or identified. So if we could speak a little bit about what that process was.
I'm going to ask Christine Carbone, who is our financial administrator, who also oversees the fiscal information for Rocketship.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
The $400,000.
Yes.
Who was just walk us through it. This is for the public record, in case anybody's watching.
Okay.
Just walk us through who assessed it and why it happened.
Okay. According to Ed Code, ADA is counted only by teachers that are credentialed. So they're the ones that take the roll call.
Body count, yeah.
So what happened was it looked like our team went in at the beginning of the year, everything was good, but some of the teachers were on temporary, correct me if I'm wrong, some of the teachers were on temporary credentialing, and it had to be dealt with by January. We do not go back in the middle of the year. We assume that the school is going to take care of that situation. Unfortunately, it did not happen. So when the auditors came in, they do an audit on the ADA, just random. Well, 4 of their teachers that they pooled were not credentialed. So therefore, they have to go back, look at what that ADA was that they counted, and they have to discount it. So therefore, that money is now owed back because they paid, the CDE paid for it, but now it's owed back to the CDE. They do not just say, give me a check. What they do is they take it out of your apportionments.
Can I just help Trustee Rossi's question? When you say auditor, where does that auditor come from?
They hire them.
The rocketship hire them?
Yes, they hire them. It's their financial auditors that do their audit every year. Yes.
Is that because there has to be some kind of report that needs to be done?
The audit. So by March 31st, that's just coming up, we get an auditor selection form from all of our charters. And there is a list of auditors that the CDE gives us that they have to be on that list. So they've been approved by the CDE. So we check it to make sure that that auditor's on the list. As you know, a nonprofit, if it has over $500,000 in revenue, has to be audited. So therefore, these companies come in and they do their audit. We do recommend that every 5 years, if they don't change their auditors, which is very expensive, that they do change partners. Does that answer your question?
Does that answer?
Thank you.
Okay. Did you have something else? Okay. Are there other questions? Trustee Rossi, go ahead.
I recall a few years ago where Trustee Kamei inquired about funds staying in the district and whether there is a sort of floating funds that cross district boundaries or even state boundaries. And I remember you very specifically, Trustee Kamei, wanting to safeguard against that. So the tardiness of the financials to me is suspect, because a budget is a living document. And I mean, we get updates. You just witnessed one. It's not something you look at once a year or twice a year. It's a living document that is adjusted and reported back to a board, such as what we experience here today. So quite frankly, even with all of your contortioned explanation, I find it suspect that it was late, because it's part of you get updates on the budget constantly and revisions, and that's part of being accountable for public dollars. And it's clear to me that that's not the case with Rocket Ship. More like a comment than a question.
Okay. Trustee DeSalvo.
Thank you. And thank you for helping with the transparency about the issues. I guess we'll learn more later. But I had a question relative to the new legislation, Senate Bill 126, which, just for the public record, would require that California charter school boards comply with the same open meeting, conflict of interest, and disclosure laws as district school boards, including holding public board meetings, opening records to the public upon request, and ensuring board members don't have a financial interest in contracts on which they vote. I asked Superintendent DeWan if I could find out if all of our charter schools comply with that current legislation, because I believe they do. I never did get an answer yet, but I want to know from you, do you comply with the intent of the new legislation, SB 126?
Yes, we do.
Does the office charter school staff have a response?
I'm sorry. Did it again? third time's a try. Actually, we started working on that prior to the Assembly Bill 126 and making sure that everyone was in compliance. We do have a couple of schools that we're still waiting for a few items, but there have been a surrender of items that were not before the 700, as well as going over the board minutes and making sure everything is posted. So we are working on that as we speak.
Thank you, Cristal. I want to give a shout out to the County Board of Education and the superintendents from Dr. Dewan to those previous to Dr. Dewan who helped us get to that point where we were requiring something of our charters through MOU that is not required right now in the state of California until this bill passes. So we were very progressive, I think, to try to get our charters to comply with this. And sometimes we don't get the kind of credit we deserve to be on the front edge of those issues. And so I want to compliment my colleagues in the past, including Trustee Song, who made sure that this was part of the charter school movement locally. Thank you.
Vice President Song.
So I want to go back to my initial question. I've asked how the parents would be informed, and your answer was you've informed board meetings. And then you answer that you hold board meetings every 3 months or every quarterly. So have you informed the parents directly or no?
No, we have not informed the parents directly. We have informed the board. On March 19th, we have our regional advisory board, which is made up of the school site council presidents. And it is my intention and on the agenda items to share with them an update on the audit.
So you are not, just for the record, you are not planning on informing parents directly of your mishaps?
That is not what I said. What I said is what's currently in place. We haven't planned out a strategy.
What is in place? I didn't understand.
We are communicating the audit findings and the tardiness of the audit to the Regional Advisory Board on March 19th. And we don't have a plan in place right now to communicate with our parents the failure to comply and the findings of the audit. But I'm happy to provide an updated plan by the next board meeting for your review.
I would appreciate that, because
Absolutely.
hearing you and your staff say that you've informed the board, and the board takes place every 3 months, and for you to think that that would suffice, my question about informing parents is quite disturbing. So I appreciate your updated plan, and I look forward to that.
Sure.
And the portion of our school, the school that we authorize that's in operation is Alma, and it's about 40,000. So would the impact of having lost that dollars would only be about 40,000 to our schools or Alma, or is that somehow divided and all schools have to bear the burden of $400,000?
You are correct. It's the 40,000 is the only impact on Alma.
And so?
That it is solely $40,000. There is no
and my
additional
question
impact
is, so do our schools suffer only the portion of losing $40,000, or do they suffer the division, however is divided by, of a $400,000, the big amount of rocket ship?
The only impact is the $40,000.
And how would that be impacted, and which schools would
at
be?
Alma.
And how would that be impacted?
It will be, Alma will receive $40,000 of less apportionment in this fiscal year.
And so do you have any idea how that would impact on a daily basis?
Alma is projected to have a positive change in net assets at the end of the year, and so it would reduce its positive change in net assets, and we would continue to ensure that the school has an appropriate and a positive budget for the year.
So can you tell me what positive amount it would have been, and now it's going down to which positive amount?
Oops. I did not bring their full budget with us, but we can follow up with you in writing on exactly the number of the change for the year.
That would be great.
Absolutely.
Trustee Rossi?
I'd like to ask about the principals of the schools that have been assessed this penalty. And I've had occasion to inquire of administrators in my community how aware a principal is on the credentialing status of each and every one of their teachers. And in your day, Trustee DeSalvo, would this be an issue that would escape your notice, that you have on your staff issues of credentialing? And you don't have to answer that, but how does that strike you, that there would be principals that wouldn't be unaware of that deficit that could expose your site to that level of penalty? And I have a question about leadership for Rocketship.
Credentials in my day were handled by pretty much the school district office. Mm-hmm. So we would get, in theory, fully credentialed teachers when they started to teach with us. Mm-hmm. If there was a lapse or something was wrong with their credential, where they came and was not able to get the credential coming to California in a timely fashion, and they started teaching with us thinking they would be able to, that sometimes would come to my attention. Other times it would not. We would never discuss the financial impact to the district or my school related to that.
Mm-hmm. And I'm getting different answers in the community as I survey administrators. Each principal is keenly aware, each of them. So I'd like to speak and ask you about your leadership, the principals that are overseeing these sites that have been affected. How do they explain what happened? They are ultimately responsible. I'd like for you to speak to that, please.
Sure. Our principals are very aware and supportive of the requirement that we need to have credentialed teachers in our classrooms at all times. And so I think and our systems have really tightened over time, both our policies, the interim milestones, and our ability to track and monitor whether each teacher is following through. And when they are not, and we have monthly reports that we share with principals around what the credential status is, and if there's a challenge, there's much more frequent engagement with them. So I'll give you the example with Alma of what occurred, which is similar, I think, to what Trustee DeSalvo was kind of shared, which was we had a teacher who started the year who was an intern. It was in an intern credential program, and our understanding was that she had completed the required test that would enable her to get that intern credential. At that time, so this was in fall of 2017-18, we did not have the system to the practice of both double checking that she had completed the test, submitted it to us, the intern credential, intern application. She was in the program. And so we discovered a few months into the year, which was why there's a lapse in the instructional minutes that was covered and why we were assessed. We needed to essentially pay back this amount of money. As soon as we were aware of this issue, we communicated that to the principal and remedied it with the teacher. And so we absolutely had the cooperation of all of our administrators. I think what we've tightened since then is our ability to be monitoring ahead of time so that we're asking the questions and getting the documentation with sufficient time in advance to remedy and address these issues with the cooperation of our principals.
Thank you.
And to add, if I may, to add to that, we have hired a full-time credentialing staff that is dedicated specifically to oversee credentialing and to ensure that teachers are meeting the milestones that they need to meet. And something as simple as coming to SCCOE to pay for the license in time. And I have, in fact, gone to the school to make sure, what's the problem? Why hasn't this license been paid yet? Do you need to use my card? Because sometimes teachers have that, end of the month gap. Let's figure out what the milestone, what is the obstacle, and get over it. But we do have now full-time credentialing staff dedicated to overseeing this, so this problem will not happen again.
Other questions? Joseph, did you have?
No, again, I want to assert that in response to Trustee Rossi, that credentialing issues are complex. We don't have reciprocity between states. I wish we did, but we don't. So if you get a teacher that moves in from Nebraska and trying to get their credential evaluated by this office and others, and you've got the time and the calendar clicking, sometimes it's complex, and it's something that I think everybody should be vigilant about. But it does slip. It slipped in Palo Alto. Obviously, it slipped in Rocketship. I think it slips in other districts in our county. But it's not the intention of anybody to allow it to be loose. It's to comply with the law. I think that's what I heard that you're attempting to do, to the best of your ability, with the kinds of complexities that exist within credentialing laws in not only this state but throughout the United States.
Yeah, we're trying to improve that best of the ability by hiring these qualified credentialing professionals to make sure that they monitor and keep abreast. So the principals get monthly reports. I also get monthly reports to make sure that things are going the way they need to be, because as lovely as it is to come before all of you, I'd rather come before you with good news rather than having to respond to shortcomings.
So I appreciate that, and I appreciate you coming and trying to explain what happened. And don't get me wrong, mistakes happen. And it's not that we're chastising for the mistake, it's the lack of transparency. And your entire staff from Rocketship approach of trying to explain what happened, and you're kind of convoluting the process. And I fully expected when you started saying that 2018 you got this consultation and you started hiring, and that it resulted in some kind of unforeseen mistake that resulted in this mishap. And instead, all I heard was you went ahead and spent more public dollars, but that had nothing to do with the mistake that happened. So please understand that when you come forward to County Board of Education and trying to explain your shortfalls or shortcomings, that it be more transparent, and that you turn around and put that same practice towards your parents, because you are, after all, public schools. Even though you may be operating like a private company, you are public schools spending public dollars. So please keep that in mind. And thank you for coming.
If there's nothing else, thank you so much for your presentation, and we look forward to your follow-up.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay.